The scorching sun beat down on Delia Vallens as she stood outside the imposing ranch house, her face flushed with humiliation and her voluminous dress soaked with sweat in the California heat. The jeers from the group of well-dressed men still echoed in her ears as they rode off, laughing at the cruel prank they'd orchestrated, sending the fat girl to clean up Fairfield Ranch as if it were a genuine position of employment. Delia clutched her small satchel of belongings tighter, fighting back tears that threatened to spill. At 22, she'd endured a lifetime of mockery about her size, but she'd hoped things might be different in Bowdy, California. The booming mining town had seemed like a fresh start when she had arrived on the stagecoach just 2 days prior. Her hand trembled as she raised it to knock on the door. Perhaps the owner wasn't home. Perhaps she could simply walk away, find some other way to earn the money she desperately needed. But the afternoon stage had already departed, and she had nowhere else to go. Before her knuckles could connect with the wood, the door swung open. Delia gasped and stepped back, nearly losing her balance on the uneven ground. A tall man with sun-bronzed skin and piercing blue eyes stood in the doorway, his expression shifting from irritation to confusion as he took in her appearance. "Can I help you, miss?" he asked, his voice deep and measured. Delia swallowed hard, her cheeks burning with shame. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Some men in town told me you were looking for someone to help with cleaning. I now realize it was just a joke at my expense." Her voice cracked on the last words. The man's eyebrows furrowed. He stepped outside fully, closing the door behind him. "Those would be the Harrington boys and their friends, I reckon. They find amusement in the suffering of others." His gaze softened slightly. "I'm Logan Fairfield. This is my ranch." "Delia Vallens," she replied automatically, then took another step back. "I apologize for bothering you, Mr. Fairfield. I'll be on my way." As she turned to leave, Logan's voice stopped her. "Miss Vallens, wait." Delia froze, expecting more ridicule, bracing herself for it as she had done her entire life. "As it happens," he continued, "I actually could use some help around here. My housekeeper left last month to get married, and I haven't had time to find a replacement." She turned back slowly, suspicion evident in her expression. "Is this another joke?" Logan shook his head, his face serious. "No joke. I've been living like a bachelor for weeks. The place is a disaster, and I've got a ranch to run." Delia hesitated, weighing her options. She needed work desperately. Her meager savings would only last another day or two at the boarding house in town. "I can pay fair wages," Logan added, seeming to sense her uncertainty. "And there's a small cabin out back where you could stay. It's nothing fancy, but it's private." "Why would you hire me?" Delia asked bluntly. "You don't know me." Logan leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms over his broad chest. "Miss Vallens, I judge people by their character, not by the judgments of fools like the Harrington boys. You showed courage coming out here alone, and you carried yourself with dignity even when you realized you'd been made the butt of a cruel joke. That tells me more about you than anything else could." Delia studied his face, searching for any sign of mockery or deceit. Finding none, she took a deep breath. "I accept your offer, Mr. Fairfield. When would you like me to start?" "How about right now?" he replied with a small smile. "I'll show you the cabin first, so you can get settled." And so began Delia's employment at Fairfield Ranch, on that sweltering summer day in 1879. The cabin was indeed small but clean, with a bed, a small table with 2 chairs, a cook stove, and a washstand. It sat about 50 yards behind the main house, nestled beneath a large oak tree that provided welcome shade. After showing her around the cabin, Logan led Delia to the main house. The moment she stepped inside, she understood his desperation for help. Dust covered every surface, dishes were piled in the sink, and clothes were strewn about haphazardly. "I know it's a mess," Logan said, running a hand through his dark hair. "I've been focusing on the ranch. Spring calving was rough this year, and I lost 2 good hands to the silver mines in town." Delia nodded, already mentally organizing the tasks ahead. "I'll need cleaning supplies." "Everything's in that closet there," he said, pointing. "Whatever you need that isn't there, just make a list, and I'll get it from town." With that, Logan left her to her work, heading back out to tend to his cattle. Delia took a deep breath, rolled up her sleeves, and began the monumental task of bringing order to chaos. By sunset, She had made significant progress on the kitchen and dining room. Her back ached and her hands were raw from scrubbing, but a sense of satisfaction filled her as she surveyed her work. The kitchen gleamed, dishes were washed and put away, and the dining table was polished to a shine. Logan returned as she was preparing to head back to her cabin for the night. "Miss Vallens," he called, stopping in the doorway to remove his dusty boots. "You've worked wonders already." His eyes widened as he took in the transformation. "Thank you, Mr. Fairfield. I'll continue with the sitting room tomorrow." "Logan, please," he insisted. "Mr. Fairfield was my father." "Then you must call me Delia," she replied with a small smile. He nodded, then glanced toward the stove. "I usually just fry up some bacon and beans for dinner. Nothing fancy." "Would you like me to cook for you as well?" Delia asked, realizing this hadn't been discussed earlier. "If it wouldn't be too much trouble," Logan answered, looking almost sheepish. "I'd be happy to adjust your wages accordingly." Delia nodded. "I can start tomorrow. It's too late now, but I could prepare breakfast in the morning before I begin cleaning." "That would be much appreciated," Logan said. "I usually rise at dawn." "As do I. Good night, then, Logan." "Good night, Delia." The next morning, Delia arrived at the main house before sunrise. She built up the fire in the cook stove and set about preparing a hearty breakfast of flapjacks, bacon, and eggs. The smell of coffee brewing filled the kitchen just as Logan entered, his hair still damp from washing. "Something smells mighty good," he said, a genuine smile lighting up his face. "Breakfast will be ready in a moment," Delia replied, flipping the last of the flapjacks onto a plate. They ate in companionable silence, the first rays of sunrise filtering through the windows. When Logan had finished, he pushed back from the table with a satisfied sigh. "Best meal I've had in months," he declared. "Thank you, Delia." She felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "You're welcome." As the days passed, a routine developed. Delia would prepare meals, clean the house, and occasionally help with mending clothes or other household tasks. Logan worked from sunup to sundown, managing the ranch with a quiet determination that Delia came to admire. They would share meals together, their conversations gradually extending beyond the practicalities of running the household. Delia learned that Logan had inherited the ranch from his father 3 years earlier, at the age of 27, when both his parents succumbed to influenza within days of each other. He had a younger sister, Lily, who was attending a boarding school back east. In turn, Logan discovered that Delia had been raised by her aunt after her parents died in a wagon accident when she was just 10 years old. Her aunt had passed away 6 months earlier, leaving Delia alone in the world. "Why, Bodie?" Logan asked one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "I heard it was a place where a person could start fresh," Delia admitted. "My aunt's neighbor had a cousin who wrote about the opportunities here." "It's a rough town," Logan commented, his expression concerned. Delia nodded. "I've noticed, but it seemed better than staying where everyone had known me and judged me my entire life." Logan's eyes met hers, and something in his gaze made her heart flutter strangely. "Their loss," he said simply. By the end of her second week at Fairfield Ranch, Delia had transformed the main house. Every room gleamed with cleanliness, curtains had been washed and rehung, and even the worn furniture seemed to have taken on new life. Logan noticed every improvement, offering genuine appreciation for her efforts. His praise never felt condescending or forced, and Delia found herself working even harder, wanting to deserve his kind words. One afternoon, as Delia was hanging laundry on the line behind the house, she heard the sound of approaching horses. Shading her eyes against the sun, she saw 3 riders approaching the Harrington boys who had sent her to the ranch as a cruel prank. Fear and humiliation washed over her. She hurried inside to warn Logan, who was at his desk reviewing the ranch accounts. "Logan," she said urgently, "the Harrington boys are coming." He looked up sharply, his expression darkening. "Stay inside if you wish. I'll handle this." "No," Delia said, straightening her shoulders. "I won't hide." Logan gave her an approving nod and stood, leading the way to the front porch. They stood side by side as the 3 men rode up to the house. "Well, look at that, boys," the eldest Harrington called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "The big girl is still here. Fairfield must have been desperate indeed." Logan's posture stiffened beside her. "State your business, Harrington. Or ride on." The three men exchanged amused glances. "Just passing by, Fairfield. Thought we'd see if you needed rescuing from your situation." Delia felt her face burn with shame, but before she could speak, Logan's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Miss Vallens has proven herself to be an invaluable asset to this ranch, something you'd understand if you had any sense of decency or work ethic. Now, I'll ask you once more, state your business or move along." The middle Harrington brothers sneered. "We're heading to check on our north pasture, just being neighborly." "Your north pasture is nowhere near my property," Logan replied coldly, "and there's nothing neighborly about insulting a lady in my employ." "Lady?" the youngest Harrington scoffed. "That's a stretch." In one fluid motion, Logan descended the porch steps, his hand resting meaningfully on the pistol at his hip. "You will apologize to Miss Vallens immediately, or you will regret it." The atmosphere grew tense, charged with unspoken threats. Finally, the eldest Harrington raised his hands in mock surrender. "No need to get riled up, Fairfield. We meant no offense." He tipped his hat insincerely toward Delia. "Apologies, miss." Without waiting for a response, the three turned their horses and rode away, but not before casting one last contemptuous glance over their shoulders. Logan watched until they were out of sight, then turned to Delia, his expression apologetic. "I'm sorry you had to endure that." Delia blinked back tears, touched by his defense of her. "Thank you for standing up for me. Few have ever done so." That evening, as they ate dinner, Logan seemed preoccupied. Finally, he set down his fork and met Delia's eyes. "I have to ride into town tomorrow for supplies. Would you like to come along?" Delia hesitated. The thought of facing the town's stares and whispers made her stomach knot with anxiety. "You don't have to," Logan added quickly, seeming to read her thoughts. "But I'd welcome your company, and you might enjoy a change of scenery." Something in his earnest expression gave Delia courage. "Yes, I'll come. Thank you." The next morning, they set out for Bodie in Logan's wagon. The journey took nearly an hour, during which Logan pointed out various landmarks and told stories about the area's history. As they approached the bustling mining town, Delia's anxiety returned. She smoothed her dress nervously, acutely aware of her size in comparison to the slender women they passed. Their first stop was the general store. As they entered, conversations hushed, and Delia felt the weight of curious stares. She kept her eyes down, focusing on the list of supplies they needed. The storekeeper, Mr. Thompson, greeted Logan warmly but cast a questioning glance at Delia. "This is Miss Vallens," Logan introduced her. "She's managing my household now." "Pleasure, miss," Mr. Thompson said, his tone neutral but not unkind. As they shopped, Logan stayed close to Delia, his presence providing a buffer against the curious glances and occasional whispers. When they reached the fabric section, he encouraged her to select material for new curtains and tablecloths. "Choose whatever you like," he said. "The house could use a woman's touch." Delia ran her fingers over a bolt of cheerful yellow calico. "This would brighten the kitchen?" "Perfect," Logan agreed, adding it to their purchases. Their next stop was the mercantile, where Logan insisted on buying Delia a new bonnet. "To protect you from the sun when you're working in the garden," he explained, though his eyes lingered appreciatively on how it framed her face. By the time they headed to lunch at the hotel restaurant, Delia was feeling more at ease. Logan guided her to a table by the window, pulling out her chair with a courtesy that drew curious looks from other diners. They had just placed their orders when a well-dressed woman approached their table, her expression pinched with disapproval. "Logan Fairfield," she said, her voice carrying deliberately. "I hardly recognized you in such unusual company." Logan's expression remained polite but cool. "Mrs. Blackwell. Allow me to introduce Miss Delia Vallens." Mrs. Blackwell barely glanced at Delia. "I heard you'd hired help, though the rumors didn't quite capture the full picture." Her emphasis on full made her meaning clear. Delia felt herself shrinking in her seat, but Logan's response surprised both women. Then the rumors failed to mention that Miss Vallens is not only an exceptional housekeeper, but also an intelligent and gracious companion whose conversation I find far more stimulating than most. His gaze swept pointedly over Mrs. Blackwell. The older woman's mouth tightened. "Well, how progressive of you. Do give my regards to your sister when you write." Such a lovely, properly raised girl. As Mrs. Blackwell walked away, Delia released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You didn't have to defend me. Logan's eyes met hers across the table. Yes, I did. Not because you needed defending, but because what she implied was wrong. Something shifted between them. In that moment, something Delia was afraid to examine too closely. The remainder of their meal passed pleasantly, and by the time they headed back to the ranch, Delia felt a curious lightness in her heart, despite the day's challenges. Over the following weeks, Delia's role at the ranch evolved. What had begun as a position scrubbing floors and cooking meals gradually expanded. Logan began asking her opinion on household expenditures, then ranch matters, discovering that she had a sharp mind for figures and practical solutions. One evening, as thunder rumbled in the distance and rain pattered against the windows, Logan spread ledgers across the dining table. I can't make sense of these cattle sales, he admitted. The numbers don't add up. Delia leaned over his shoulder, the warmth of him just inches away. May I? She asked, reaching for the ledger. For nearly an hour they worked side by side, Delia meticulously tracing the discrepancies until she discovered the problem. Here, she said, pointing to an entry. Someone recorded this sale twice, but the payment only came in once. Logan stared at the page, then at Delia, admiration clear in his eyes. You're remarkable. Where did you learn to handle accounts? My aunt ran a small dressmaking business, Delia explained. She taught me everything about keeping books. Logan sat back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. Delia, would you consider taking on more responsibility here? Not just the household, but helping me manage the ranch accounts? Delia's heart raced at the prospect. You'd trust me with that? I already do, Logan said simply. The rain intensified outside, but inside, something warm bloomed in Delia's chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. Summer turned to fall, and as the landscape around Bodie transformed, so did the relationship between Delia and Logan. They worked as partners now, Delia managing the books and household, while Logan handled the cattle and land. Each evening, they would sit together on the porch or by the fire, discussing the day's events or sharing stories from their pasts. Delia found herself laughing more than she had in years, and Logan seemed to shed the serious demeanor he wore around others. On a crisp October morning, Logan announced at breakfast that he needed to ride to the north pasture to check on a section of fence before winter set in. Would you like to come? He asked Delia. It's about an hour's ride, and the view from there is spectacular. Delia hesitated. I've never ridden a horse before, she admitted, embarrassment coloring her voice. Her size had always prevented her from attempting many activities others took for granted. Logan's expression revealed no judgment. Old Bess is gentle as they come. I could teach you if you'd like to learn. The prospect terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. What if I'm too heavy for her? Bess has carried loads of hay heavier than any person, Logan assured her. She's sturdy and sure-footed. An hour later, Delia found herself in the corral, facing a placid brown mare with kind eyes. Logan stood beside her, patient and encouraging. Place your foot in the stirrup. I've adjusted it for your height and grabbed the saddle horn, he instructed. Delia took a deep breath and did as he said, then faltered. I don't think I can pull myself up. Without hesitation, Logan moved behind her, his strong hands at her waist. On the count of 3, push up with your foot, and I'll help lift you. 1, 2, 3. With his assistance, Delia found herself seated atop the horse, a mixture of terror and exhilaration rushing through her veins. Logan's hands remained at her waist a moment longer than necessary, steadying her. You're doing wonderfully, he encouraged, handing her the reins. Just hold these gently. Don't pull too hard. For the next half hour, Logan led Bess around the corral, teaching Delia the basics of riding. By the time they ventured beyond the ranch yard, Delia had gained enough confidence to control the horse herself, though Logan stayed close beside her on his stallion. The ride to the north pasture took longer than usual due to their leisurely pace, but Delia hardly noticed the time. The beauty of the landscape captivated her, rolling hills giving way to distant mountains, the trees aflame with autumn colors. When they reached their destination, Logan helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist as she found her footing on solid ground again. Delia's legs felt wobbly, unaccustomed to riding. "You'll be sore tomorrow," Logan warned with a smile, "but it gets easier with practice." They walked together to inspect the fence line, the horses grazing nearby. When they reached a high point overlooking the valley, Logan spread a blanket he'd brought along. "I thought we might have lunch here," he said, producing a bundle wrapped in cloth from his saddlebag. They sat side by side, sharing bread, cheese, and apples as they gazed out at the breathtaking view. The companionable silence between them felt precious to Delia, a gift she had never expected to receive. "I'm glad you came to my ranch that day," Logan said suddenly, his voice low. "Even if it started as a cruel joke." Delia glanced at him, startled by the sincerity in his tone. "I'm glad too, though I was terrified you'd send me away." "Send away the best thing that ever happened to Fairfield Ranch? I'd be a fool." His blue eyes held hers, and Delia felt her heart skip a beat. Before she could respond, distant gunshots echoed across the valley. Logan was on his feet instantly, his expression alert. "That came from near the western boundary," he said tensely. "We should head back." The ride back to the ranch was much faster, with Delia clinging to Bess's mane as the horse followed Logan's lead. By the time they reached the ranch yard, two of Logan's ranch hands were already there, their expressions grim. "Rustlers, boss," one of them reported. "They made off with about a dozen head from the western pasture." Logan's face hardened. "Gather the men. We'll track them." "Logan, be careful," Delia said, unable to hide her concern. He turned to her, his expression softening momentarily. "Stay in the house. Lock the doors. I'll be back as soon as I can." With that, he was gone, riding out with his men in pursuit of the cattle thieves. Delia watched until they disappeared from sight, her heart heavy with worry. The hours crawled by as Delia waited anxiously in the main house. She tried to occupy herself with chores, but her thoughts remained with Logan and the danger he might be facing. Night fell, and still there was no sign of the men's return. Delia had just built up the fire when she heard hoofbeats approaching. She rushed to the window, relief flooding her as she recognized Logan's form in the moonlight. But her relief turned to alarm when she realized he was slumped forward in the saddle. She ran outside as Logan's men helped him down from his horse. "He took a bullet to the shoulder," one of them explained grimly. "Doc's away in Virginia City. Won't be back for days." "Get him inside," Delia commanded, her fear giving way to determination. "Put him on the bed in the guest room. It'll be easier to tend to him there." While the men carried Logan inside, Delia gathered supplies, hot water, clean cloths, the bottle of whiskey Logan kept in the kitchen cupboard, and the sewing kit. Logan was conscious but pale when she entered the room, his shirt already removed by one of the ranch hands. "The rustlers?" she asked as she set down her supplies. "Got away," Logan said through gritted teeth. "But we recovered the cattle." Delia examined the wound in his left shoulder, relieved to see that the bullet had passed clean through. "This will hurt," she warned, reaching for the whiskey. Logan nodded, his jaw set. "Do what you need to do." With steady hands that belied her inner turmoil, Delia cleaned and stitched the wound, front and back. Logan remained stoic throughout, though sweat beaded on his forehead from the pain. When she had finished bandaging his shoulder, Delia helped him drink some water, then mixed a powder from Logan's medicine cabinet to help with the pain. "You have a gentle touch," Logan murmured as the medicine began to take effect, his eyes growing heavy. "Thank you, Delia." "Rest now," she said softly, brushing damp hair from his forehead. For 3 days, Delia barely left Logan's side, changing his bandages, bringing him broth and water, and monitoring for signs of fever. The ranch hands took care of the essential work outside, reporting to Delia each evening. On the 4th morning, Delia entered the sick room to find Logan sitting up in bed, his color much improved. "You should be lying down," she scolded gently, setting a tray of breakfast on the bedside table. "I've imposed on you enough," Logan replied. "You haven't slept properly in days. I can see it in your face." "I've been worried about you," Delia admitted, helping him adjust his pillows. Logan caught her hand in his touch sending warmth spreading through her. "No one has ever cared for me the way you have, Delia. Not just these past days, but since you came here." Delia's heart pounded in her chest. "It's my job to look after the household." "Is that all this is to you? A job?" Logan's blue eyes searched hers, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. The question hung in the air between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Before Delia could find her voice to answer, the sound of an approaching carriage interrupted the moment. Moving to the window, Delia was surprised to see an elegant carriage pulling up to the house. A young woman in a fashionable traveling outfit stepped down, assisted by the driver. "I believe your sister has arrived," Delia said, recognizing Lily Fairfield from the photographs in Logan's study. Logan's expression brightened. "Lily wasn't expected for another week. Help me up, please. I want to greet her." Despite Delia's protests, Logan insisted on dressing and moving to the sitting room to receive his sister. Delia helped him into a clean shirt and assisted him down the hallway, acutely aware of his arm around her waist, and his body pressed against her side for support. Lily Fairfield burst into the house like a whirlwind of energy, her delicate features lighting up at the sight of her brother. "Logan, I decided to surprise." Her voice faltered as she took in his pale complexion and the arm he kept close to his body. "What happened to you?" "Just a minor disagreement with some cattle rustlers," Logan said lightly. "I'm on the mend, thanks to Delia." Lily's gaze shifted to Delia, taking in her simple dress and full figure with undisguised curiosity. "You must be the housekeeper Mrs. Blackwell mentioned in her letter." Delia felt her cheeks warm under the scrutiny. "Yes, I'm Delia Vallens. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Fairfield." Lily's assessment lasted another moment before she turned back to her brother. "Well, you look awful. Back to bed with you. We can catch up while you rest." As Delia helped Logan back to his room, she could feel Lily's eyes following them, observing the familiar way Logan leaned on her, the gentle care with which Delia supported him. Over the next few days, Lily's presence changed the dynamics at the ranch. She was polite to Delia, but maintained a certain distance, clearly trying to understand her brother's relationship with his housekeeper. One afternoon, as Delia was preparing dinner, Lily entered the kitchen and sat at the table, watching her work. "My brother thinks very highly of you," she said without preamble. Delia concentrated on chopping vegetables. "Mr. Fairfield is a kind employer." Lily laughed softly. "Is that what you call him when you're alone, Mr. Fairfield? Because he refers to you as Delia with such fondness that Mrs. Blackwell was quite scandalized." Delia set down her knife, turning to face the younger woman. "Your brother and I have developed a professional partnership. I help manage the household and the accounts, and tend his wounds, and sit by his bedside all night, and look at him when you think no one is watching," Lily added, her tone more curious than accusatory. Heat crept up Delia's neck. "Miss Fairfield?" "Lily, please. And I'm not judging you, Delia. Quite the opposite." Lily's expression softened. "I haven't seen my brother this content in years, not since before our parents died. He smiles now. He laughs. And I suspect you're the reason why." Delia didn't know how to respond to this unexpected assessment. "The question is," Lily continued, "what are you going to do about it?" "I don't understand." Lily stood, moving closer. "My brother cares deeply for you. Anyone with eyes can see it. But Logan is stubborn and proper to a fault. He won't act on his feelings unless he's certain they're returned." Delia's heart raced at Lily's words. "I'm his housekeeper. I'm not the kind of woman someone like Logan Fairfield marries." "And what kind would that be? Someone like Mrs. Blackwell's daughter? Skinny, vapid, and interested only in his property?" Lily shook her head. "Logan deserves someone who sees him for who he is, not what he owns. Someone who challenges him, supports him, makes him better." She paused meaningfully. "Someone like you." With that, Lily left the kitchen, leaving Delia to her chaotic thoughts. That evening, dinner was a strained affair. Logan, still recovering but insistent on joining them at the table, seemed to sense the tension between the women, but couldn't identify its source. Afterward, Lily announced she was retiring early, leaving Logan and Delia alone in the sitting room. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting warm light across the room as an awkward silence stretched between them. "You've been quiet today," Logan observed finally. Delia nodded, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "I had a rather illuminating conversation with your sister." "Ah." Logan's expression turned wary. "Lily can be rather forthright. I hope she didn't overstep." "She suggested that you—" Delia hesitated, her courage faltering, "that you might have feelings for me beyond our professional arrangement." The silence that followed seemed to stretch eternally. When Delia finally gathered the courage to look up, she found Logan watching her, his blue eyes intense and vulnerable. "And if she were right?" he asked softly. "What would you think about that?" Delia's heart hammered in her chest. "I would think it improbable. Men like you don't fall in love with women like me." Logan stood slowly, mindful of his injured shoulder, and moved to sit beside her on the sofa. "And what kind of man do you think I am, Delia? Handsome, successful, respected?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You could have any woman you wanted. I want the woman who came to my door that summer day, who transformed not just my home, but my life." Logan's hand found hers, his touch gentle but insistent. "I want the woman who sees me as a partner, not a prize, who challenges me to be better, who makes me laugh and think and feel." Delia's eyes filled with tears. "Logan, the town already talks. They'll say you settled for less, that you could have done better, better than brilliant, compassionate, and beautiful. I don't think that exists." His free hand came up to cup her cheek. "Delia, I've been falling in love with you since the day you organized my chaotic ledgers and told me, quite firmly, that I was doing it all wrong." A laugh bubbled up through Delia's tears. "You were doing it wrong." "I know, and you fixed it, just like you fix so many things around here." His thumb gently wiped away a tear. "But most importantly, you fixed something in me that I didn't even realize was broken." "I love you too," Delia whispered, the words she'd held back for months finally finding their way past her lips. Logan's kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a passion that left Delia breathless. When they finally parted, his eyes held a question. "Marry me, Delia. Be my partner in every way." "The town will talk," she warned again, though her heart was already saying yes. "Let them," Logan replied. "We'll be too busy building our life together to notice." 2 months later, on a clear December morning, Delia Vallens became Delia Fairfield in a small ceremony at the ranch. Lily stood as her bridesmaid, beaming with approval as her brother pledged his life to the woman who had begun as his housekeeper and become his heart. The town did talk, of course. Some, like Mrs. Blackwell, sniffed disapprovingly at the match. Others, like Mr. Thompson at the general store, simply nodded as if they'd expected it all along. But as the years passed, even the skeptics had to admit that Fairfield Ranch thrived under the partnership of Logan and Delia. Their complementary strengths, his knowledge of the land and cattle, her head for business turned a modest ranch into one of the most prosperous in the county. 5 years after their wedding, as they sat on the porch watching their twin sons play under the oak tree by Delia's old cabin, Logan took his wife's hand in his. "Do you ever think about how we met?" he asked, his eyes crinkling with amusement. Delia chuckled, leaning against his shoulder. "You mean how the cruelest prank of my life led me to the greatest happiness?" "I've always wanted to thank those Harrington boys," Logan admitted, "though I never had the heart to tell them so." "No need," Delia replied, her free hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly where their third child grew. "I think our happiness is thanks enough." As the sun set over Fairfield Ranch, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Delia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the humiliated young woman sent to scrub floors as a joke, to the confident wife, mother, and ranch partner she had become. Logan squeezed her hand as if reading her thoughts. "I love you, Delia Fairfield." "And I love you," she replied, her heart full to bursting with the life they had built together, a life far richer and more beautiful than either of them could have imagined on that scorching summer day when fate, disguised as a cruel joke, had brought them together.